I had gotten one, and it was a question that I've thought, this is a story that I've probably never told in full. I've told the story of the actual, when I got my head shaved in New Orleans. I've told a story of the actual head shaving. I don't think I've told the story, but we're all old these days, so what's fuck? I don't mind if I embarrass some people or two. But anyway, of how the whole thing came about. And I wish I had the question in front of me so I could credit the fucking guy's name, but I've had the flu, folks. So the point is, we will press on. Have I ever told the complete story of the head shaving, Brian?
I don't know. I mean, as you're saying this, I know a story about it, and I've heard you discuss it, and I know about Bobby Fulton and the Bic razor and about the clippers breaking and all of that stuff. I'm wondering what I don't know already about that.
Okay, well, what led up to it?
What led up to the stipulation?
Well, people have seen and asked me some on Twitter. They've seen some of the Mid-South Wrestling TV clips of me when I was wearing the mask, right? It's because I had my head shaved, and then we did the deal where I had the mask on, and Duggan was the babyface. He'd pop the mask at the end of the finish of the house shows every night so people could see me. Oh, my God, and I'd run, and et cetera, et cetera. But so the question was, why did this happen? And in 1984, I was not the fully formed asshole Jim Cornette that you see in front of you today. I was the heel manager of the top heel tag team that was setting box office records in Mid-South Wrestling, and the Golden Goose heat magnet that led them in that one territory to draw in the equivalent of today's money over $30 million that year. But nevertheless, I digress. I was still a rookie dipshit that was glad to be there, right? And Bill Dundee was a booker at the time. I've known Bill since 1976. And we all went down together as part of the trade with Jarrett and Watts, me, Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, Bill Dundee as booker, Terry Taylor went, Buddy Landell. He got all that talent from Memphis, and we had all known each other for a while. So it was one night, and in Lafayette, Louisiana, and in the heel locker room, and Dundee was in a bad mood, and we all got in bad. We're doing 3,000 and 4,000 miles a week in the fucking car. We're often riding with each other. Dundee was the booker, so he could go either way. He could ride with the heels or the baby faces. And working 8-9 times a week and all that, just that stress, right? So everybody got picky with each other from time to another. But Dundee's browbeating me about something in the locker room. And he was getting, and it wasn't about wrestling. If it had been, Cornette, you should have done this in the finish, or this is how you do this, I'd be, yes, sir, I'm sorry. But it was just our personal shit, right? He just browbeating me. And he's getting a little stiff, and the boys are kind of looking like, what the fuck's up Bill's ass? And I bowed back up at him verbally and zinged him. And of course, then I've heard he's done this to a few people we might talk about here in the future, but he goes and he doesn't slap me in the face because I kind of ducked a little bit, but he bear pawed me in the side of the head, right? Like, what the fuck? And he's like, Arr! And he storms out of the fucking locker room, and he got heat with the boys because the boys are kind of like, what the fuck? He brought that up anyway and was continuing it. Right. And I had to say something or they'd have been, fucking hot at me. This is all this bullying in the locker room. Yeah, the booker just cuffed Cornette on the side of the fucking head. Should I have gone to human resources? What the fuck? That was every night shit. Guys were fucking pushing, shoving, cussing, slapping, whatever. Anyway, so for a couple of days, we were a little cranky with each other, and I didn't think anything about it. But the next week, that's when I got the call. Well, guess what we booked in New Orleans? A match for you to lose your hair. And I'm like, what the fuck? So he was mad at me because I bowed up and stung him, I think, in front of the boys, just like I was mad because he, was bowing up at me in front of the boys. But he had the pencil. So I wasn't in the booking meetings because I was nobody, and they did that. Dundee'd go up with Watts in Oklahoma, and they'd work shit out for a few days. So I wasn't involved, but the timing seemed suspect. So I'm like, okay. And then I get on the phone with fucking the Cowboy, and because I knew from Memphis and I knew from the wrestling business, even though I was a rookie, you usually get an extra payoff for that, but that's if you're goddamn, Bill Dundee in Memphis, he got the down payment on a fucking house in Hendersonville for his and his wife's fucking hair in 77, but I'm fucking glad to be there. And Watts was like, oh, it's going to be a big house. Because Watts didn't just come up with the idea, let's shave Cornette's head, but the way that it was sold, I can guarantee you, because I've done these things. New Orleans was the town that was hurt. We were having a record year, but dog had left and New Orleans was down, especially the downtown municipal auditorium. At the time in New Orleans, we had started, in the old days in Mid-South Wrestling, if they couldn't go to the downtown auditorium, which was the dog's house, and those stories are legendary, DiBiase having to be taken out of the fucking building in the trunk of Grizzly Smith's car so the people wouldn't kill him after he turned on dog, and all the cops on horseback quelling the riots from the heat and et cetera, and the fucking police barricades they had in the room when guys got over the barricade and slipped through the cops and got in the ring and got a shot at the heel or whatever, the room that the fan was then put in by the cops so that the heel could go in and speak to him for a few minutes. That was the downtown building. And those people were fucking, you could get the steam up in that room. You could raise the temperature in the downtown. Tony Zane, a job guy, nice kid, but Georgia, but a job guy at the time, he got stabbed when he was in the middle of a pull apart one time. The fans hit the ring. They were stabbing the fucking job guys, right? So anyway, New Orleans was hurt. The downtown building, especially, because that was Dog's house. The people were primarily the downtown New Orleans fans, the Cajuns, the black folks, the downtown people that didn't have transportation. Said they would either just walk or maybe they'd ride the bus or whatever the fuck. They wouldn't go to the UNO Lakefront Arena, which we'd started running in 84. But that was out in the suburbs, beautiful building. We would do a big house there every once in a while because that was the suburban people that wouldn't go to the downtown building because of the crowds and the parking and the danger. But they would fucking come every so often to the lakefront. And then you'd get the different crowd at downtown. And then in the early days, before they could go to the lakefront, if they couldn't get the downtown building, they'd go out to the St. Bernard Civic Center, not named after a dog, but an actual Catholic saint, apparently. I think is only 8 or 9 miles from downtown, but they had a bus line, and it was kind of like the wrestling fan neighborhood. It was not an affluent suburb. And that building held a couple thousand people, and they could use that every once in a while. And then everybody would go to the Superdome, right? Because that was something everybody could agree on, and that was the big show. That's why they always drew the big crowds there, because all the different crowds came to the Superdome. But the downtown building was sucking hind tit. No dog. What are we going to do? So Dundee said, let's fucking make the people, let's make them come. They're going to see Cornette get his head shaved, right? Oh, God. And I'm sure that's how he sold it to Watts. But anyway, the deal was, as you will recall, it was Hercules Hernandez versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and it'd be Duggan's hair versus my hair. If Hercules lost, I'd get my head shaved. And the referee was Steve Dr. Death Williams. And at the time, Doc had been a babyface. He'd never been a heel. He'd come out of college at Oklahoma, and he'd been presented as the All-American football player.
They were teasing it, though, with him and Terry Taylor. They were teasing
Well, yeah, he was starting to get a little fucking, grumpy, right? But he was still a babyface. And so it looked like the deck was stacked. And also, Doc and Duggan were close friends. So this is it. Obviously, we're going to pay to see Cornette get his head shaved. Well, I was not as big a draw in New Orleans as a Junkyard Dog because the only time we were there that whole year that they opened up both sides of the building because they had the big movable curtain. And half the building would hold like 4,000. And they opened it all up. It held like 8. And in the early days, the Dog, they'd open it all up, right? But anyway, they opened the whole thing up, and I think the house was $25,000, which at ticket prices, downtown building in those days was probably a little less than 4,000 people. So they could have not opened up the other half, right? So I was like, fuck, I'm getting my head shaved. We didn't even sell out. But that's how it came about. And then you can look up on YouTube the story of how, it occurred. But the thing was, since this had just been slapped together, in the old days, they used to have a barber come and make a big ceremony out of it. Well, I had said, look, since I ain't getting any extra payoff, I'd said to myself, since I ain't getting any extra payoff, I said, look, I'll go for a crew cut, right? And shave it, but I'm not doing the full Stone Cold. So I went out and I bought my own self a professional set of barber clippers, but battery operated, because how the fuck we going to plug something in at ringside, right? Nobody else ever thought of it either. Run a goddamn extension cord out to ringside. So I got the battery operated clippers and I got the fucking guard on for the goddamn crew cut. Since none of us were trained tonsorial artists, what we didn't realize until we got out there was that my hair was so thick at the time, believe it or not, and it was so fucking hot and wet, and I'd been sweating. It was just like a wet mop. The goddamn plug-in clippers are more powerful. That's why barbers use the plug-in clippers, those battery-operated things. In those days, and especially a whole wet mop of hair, fuck, it wouldn't work. And it wouldn't work, and what the fuck? Oh, goddamn. And that's when, and then they quit, and whatever the fuck. And then here comes the goddamn scissors out of Terry Taylor's manicure toiletry bag, and he broke the scissors that are about 3 inches long, and they're holding me down, and the heels are trying to pull me out, and the babyface are holding me down, and then Bobby Fulton runs out the ring with the shaving cream and a goddamn Bic disposable, and he's taking my skin off in fucking strips.
That's
I'm like,
the best part.
Yeah, you motherfucker.
Well, no, as soon as he comes to the ring, it's on the video, which got
it's on the
TV.
video.
It was on Power Pro Wrestling, I think. When Bobby's on the apron, you turn to the back and you look, and you see he has a razor, and you go, "No, fuck you, Bobby!" Yeah, I can read your lips clear as day.
And so they've gouged it all up with the trimmers, and then they've fucking hacked some off with the scissors, and now he sprays my whole head with the fucking shaving cream, and he's taking the Bic disposable, and he's making track marks, and I'm starting to bleed, and what the fuck? I'm like, finally I said, guys, I'm fucking leaving here in about 2 seconds, and he ain't gonna be able to stop me. And I struggled to get my leg to Hercules Hernandez first, and he was strong enough to pull me out, and the midnight got me. And I came back and looked like a cross between a chemotherapy patient and a dog with the mange.
Was the cowboy backstage?
No, it was he never came to New Orleans unless it was the Superdome. He came to Oklahoma City and Tulsa and TV and interviews every Wednesday. But anyway, but then back in the back, I've took the clippers, when I've got it fucking dried off and we could see what the fuck was going on, and took it the rest of the way down, because what the fuck? I couldn't go out in public like that. It looked like I'd been one of those fucking the groups of skinheads that attacked me or whatever the fuck. There was nothing been backwards on my forehead. But that's the whole fucking story there, because we got grumpy with each other, me and Dundee, in the fucking locker room in Lafayette. But that's why I saw the fucking bullying in the locker room. This was weekly shit. Well, fuck you. I'll get your fucking head shaved for you, or whatever the fuck. And you either did it or you didn't. You didn't fucking cry about it. And I just wore a baseball cap out in public for 6 weeks, and I looked like Opie Taylor in a fucking baseball cap.
What team was on the cap?
I don't fucking remember. The first one that I found that looked like it, I didn't look like I was wearing a goddamn tin pan over my fucking head.
So with that story told, 2 questions as a quick follow-up. 1, should you have learned your lesson before Johnson City in 94 with Candido? And 2, if you can go back and change anything, would you have done that stipulation still with the Rock and Roll Express against Lee and Candido in Johnson City?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it now. I didn't. It wasn't an applicable thing because the fans were not mad. They saw them fucking shaving giant chunks off of my head, and then every night would see me with basically no fucking hair. So nobody got cheated. And actually, I forgot to mention the finish of the match was that I pulled $1,000 cash out of my pocket and handed it to Dr. Death. And he drops the elbow on fucking the back of Duggan's head when he had Hercules covered and counted the pin. So Hercules actually won. Duggan was supposed to be the one to get his head shaved.
That's right.
But since it was obviously a fuck job, all the baby faces came out, held me down, and shaved my fucking, and the people loved it. There was no issue there whatsoever. I just didn't love it. But when we tried to do the same thing 10 years later, Candido, A, didn't have as much heat as I did, B, didn't have as much hair, and C, the people thought they was going to get to see Tammy's hair shaved. So that's the fucking lesson I learned, is I fucking fucked around with it too much and shouldn't have done it. So no, I would have never done that again. but no, the last problem we had in New Orleans was the people being mad. They were tickled pink. They got to see all that shit.
And then at WrestleMania 3, same thing. Piper Adonis, loser gets their head shaved, and they couldn't get Adonis's hair off because the buzzer broke right away. So then they had to cut off little bits and throw it into the air. No one had a good buzzer.
That's the thing. It should have got one of those fucking, diddlator Mach 5s out of the fucking backs of the magazines. Those things buzz like crazy. They sound like jackhammers.
Or the Lawnmower 3.0.
Well, I didn't know we had milked the previous bit as far as we were going to go yet. I was going to head in that direction. But yes, now, 35 years later, ladies and gentlemen, the technology has been improved to the point where if you want to shave a sweaty manager's head in the middle of a downtown municipal auditorium in front of 5,000 fucking Cajuns, or as I said, a little less than 4,000, you don't need to worry about these fucking substandard pieces of equipment. You can purchase the Lawnmower 3.0.